Hello and welcome to Pressure Point. I'm your host, Valerie Dudoward. Our topic this program, Forget Me Not, Adoption Reunion. My guest this program, who I'd like to welcome, sitting next to me, Nancy Kato, Vice President of the Forget Me Not Family Society, and sitting next to her, Cecelia Reekie, who is serving as the President of the Society. Welcome to Pressure Point.
Thank you.
I think that for many people, when we hear adoption and reunion and think of what that might mean, it really comes down to a personal process and a personal benchmark in somebody's life. Nancy, what was yours?
I'm a birth mother. I got pregnant at 17 and gave birth just after my 18th birthday. At the time, it was 1971-72, and it wasn't acceptable to be an unwed mother. And I also had some sense of family values and ethics, and I wanted my child to have the benefit of a mother and father. I believed in that family unit. And I didn't also see a lot of choices available to me either, being just out of high school, no job, no money, no future. I wanted the best for my child, and social services convinced me as well that it would be the best interest of my child to just give her up and let her have the opportunity of being raised in a family. So I made the decision to relinquish. And they suggested that I would just get on with my life and forget about it and carry on. Unfortunately, as a birth mother, and we don't forget, and over the years it became harder and harder to put her out of my mind. And finally, I think part of it was also an age thing. When I got to be near 40, I felt that I needed to look after some of the excess baggage, you might say, from my past. And also because BC created an active search registry, I decided to sign up. And I decided that I also needed to look at some of my own personal issues about the relinquishment and what it had done with my life, how did my life turn out. And I started looking for support groups, and eventually found the Forget Me Not Family Society, where I eventually met Cecelia. And slowly over time, I started associating with other birth mothers and realizing I'm not alone. And they finally found her in 1992, but unfortunately she wasn't ready to meet me at that time.
Was that a shock to you, or had you prepared for that?
I had been with a group of birth mothers who had all reunited. So even though we were looking at issues around reunion, I had not met anybody that had been turned down. So I thought I had done a lot of work on things that might happen, including maybe not even finding her alive. But I had not thought that I thought she might face me and tell me to get out of her life, but I didn't think she would even not give me the chance to say it to my face. So when she refused me, I did more work. I became more involved in the society itself. I became more involved in working with other adoptees and birth parents and doing support groups. And eventually it did pay off. It gave her an opportunity to sort of sort things out for herself. And in 1994, she did finally agree to meet me, and we are working on establishing our relationship now.
So quite the tenaciousness, I guess, that was needed by you and by her to get to where you are.
I had to make some hard decisions about, it was very difficult for me to come out of that closet. I had locked away that secret and never told anybody. I had gone through the pregnancy and not told anybody, and then until afterwards, and then I buried it or tried to. But I lived with that shame and humiliation for all of these years, and nobody ever told me what I had done was not this huge horrible mistake or bad thing. Nobody had ever told me that I was not a bad girl. And it wasn't until I talked to my daughter for the first time that she said, by the way, I want you to know I never blamed you for the decision you made. And all of a sudden, I had this validation, and that I could let go, and I could actually come out and tell people that I had a child, and nobody was going to judge me, nobody was going to shoot me, nobody was going to turn their back on me. But I lived with that for 23 years.
And Cecelia, you have not really a mirror image story, but a reflective story of the one that Nancy has.
Mm-hmm. I was adopted as an infant when I was 24. After the birth of my first son, I think that was a trigger point for me, and decided that I would do my search and hopefully a reunion, and put my name into parent finders, and within 3 days they had called and told me that they had talked to my birth mom. Yeah, it was really quick. I had called my adopted parents, and they had always been supportive of the idea and had said that when I was ready they would support me. So I called them and let them know that I was starting, and we all, I think, thought we had a fair bit of time before anything would happen. So when that call came, and I live in Langley, she lives in Delta, we met that night, and it was just it was a whirlwind, and my emotions were crazy. Within a month, I had met my birth father, and a whole culture, because my father's Native Indian. So I went back to my community. It was difficult. It wasn't easy. I think I'm 9 years into it. I would say it's getting easier now, but it's still, there's a lot of issues that come up, and for us, I think every reunion is different. There's always something. My birth mom did not have any children after me, couldn't, and I think a doctor and my grandfather had a lot to play in that decision, and she paid a heavy price for conceiving and getting pregnant at such a young age, and my birth father also had consequences. And I think it was really difficult for them as well for me, but it was also really healthy because I learned the truth, and was really given some answers, which is what I wanted, and I wanted the truth. I think that's when people are searching, they want the truth, and no matter how hard it is or how difficult it is, the truth is always easier to take. And so meeting my birth family, it was a wonderful experience, but it's been a lot of work.
Did you know when you were growing up that you were adopted?
Yeah, I had been told before I could understand, and I recommend that to all adoptive parents. I don't think we should have a memory of sitting down at the kitchen table and saying we have something to tell you and being told you're adopted at 7 or 8. I knew well before I could understand, and it was just a part of my life, and it was something that I accepted, and I was never angry or resentful, and probably because it was a very relaxed subject. It wasn't something that was taboo or negative, or my birth parents weren't spoken in a negative tone. So I wasn't given, other than the outside pressures maybe from younger children when I was young, but as far as my family, they were they were supportive and they were honest, and that's what everybody needs. So it was, they were good. They were really good.
What is the secrecy that is part of all of this? Because for, I think, probably within more a time period or an era, often children grew up and didn't know their whole lives, or sometimes they would learn, usually in a wrenching way, later on in their lives that they had been adopted. And Nancy, as you were saying, often birth mothers never told anybody that they had even been pregnant.
I think society back then was a lot different, and our culture was a lot different, and I find that it's even difficult sometimes for even Cecelia, after all our association, our years together, to understand what it was like to live back in a culture where, to be an unwed mother, my God, bad person that needed to be hidden away, and you brought all this shame and humiliation to the family. And I think sometimes it was they thought that you could survive by just burying it and getting rid of it, and that nobody needed to ever know, that the government would protect us and protect everybody by burying your secret, and the child could then, and the adoptive parents could pretend that the child was as born to them, and nobody would ever have to know this deep, horrible, dark secret that this happened to you. And so adoptees grew up also not being free in a lot of cases to talk about adopted. It was a whispered word because you were supposed to feel as if you belonged to that family and that there was never this other life. And I think as a birth mother, it was a survival instinct for me. If I left it in the forefront, I'm not sure where things would have gone. As it was, I did try to get on with my life, but I did keep that secret, and it, in retrospect, was a horrible secret to have to keep. It took me a few years, over the last few years, to not think of my whole life as being a lie, because I had lived through this. And it was a real hard struggle and a real hard juggle for me, and I didn't do anything bad. And I think it's really important for women, particularly birth mothers, to come out of that closet and realize that society today is not going to judge you. It is not a bad thing. People, when I came out of my closet, were going, wow, that's really neat. And how is it, and what's it like, and what is she like? Does she look like you? And to them, it's a wonderful, acceptable thing. And it just took a long time, but I think it's really important to get that message out that society today has changed, the culture has changed, the government has changed, the act itself has changed. It's created a more open environment, that it's okay to share, that we're trying to make things better for the child and create this openness and sharing of information, their history.
One of the interesting things is my birth father hadn't told anybody about me, so he carried a secret. Yeah. For 24 years as a man. And to go back, I'm sure it was very difficult for him to, when I placed the phone call, for him to acknowledge and admit and take ownership of a child, and to have to tell his wife and his children. We have a wonderful relationship, and I'm glad he was able to put that fear aside and say yes to my contact. I think it's been great for him, and it's been great for me. And I think, the secrecy goes with the birth parents, but also goes with the adoptive parents, because I think there's a lot of, whether, depending on the circumstances for the adoption, there's infertility issues, of shame and the difficult time. And, so the secrets didn't only come through with the birth parents or the adoptee and their life circumstance, but it was also with the adoptive parents, whether there was a child that may have passed away or whether there was, infertility issues. All those secrets are coming to the forefront as well when they finally adopt a child. They want so badly for this child to blend in, and the social workers were telling them that this child would. And, now they're really made aware of the issues, that this child will always, it comes with the past. That child comes with the past, and that's acknowledged right off the start. I think that's one of the positive things that's happening right now in adoption. So it's, there's secrets all the way around the triad, and it's getting people to start talking.
The triad is an expression around adoption and reunion that I find like really good illustration of how many lives are involved. What is the triad?
The triad, or the adoption circle, is all of those touched by adoption, and it could either be the adoptive parents, the birth parents, the adoptee themselves, the extended families, the siblings, and also the professionals that are now working in the field of adoption. I think statistically we're looking at about 1 in 3 people today in Canada touched by adoption, and the triad is all those people touched by it. Our sort of motto for our society is that this is a lifelong process for everybody touched by it.
The Forget-Me-Not Family Society is extremely active and far-reaching in its activities. What are some of the kinds of things that the two of you do to bring awareness and support?
We do these TV programs. We go to conferences and present workshops. We attend conferences.
We run our own conference every year as well in Vancouver. We are heading into our 5th national Canadian conference on adoption. We publish a newsletter, and I brought a copy. Inside the newsletter are numbers of articles. It's really important for people to share their stories. It's really important to tell your story. And we all like to hear your stories, so we try to include stories. We have poetry. We have a Lean On Me list, which is really important. It's a listing of people that are in the adoption circle that are willing to talk to others that are in the circle anywhere in BC. We have also a listing of books. We have a listing of support groups around the province that are under the umbrella of Forget Me Not Family Society. We also have a website now. Who doesn't? And it's very active. We get, I don't know how many hundreds of inquiries onto our website from all around the world on what we're doing in BC particularly. Cecelia was very active last year in the lobbying for the change of the new act, and so we've taken on an activist role as well. We do peer counseling, and what else?
That's enough.
Yeah, as volunteers.
The new legislation, the provincial legislation to the Adoption Act, you've brought something to share along that too.
This is the first newsletter of the new BC Adoption Act. It provides answers to the most commonly asked questions about how to search, where to search, who to contact, what if you don't want to be searched out, what you're entitled to, the information you're entitled to. This is published by the Ministry of Social Services, and they also have a toll-free 1888 number that you can call and get more information on what this means to you. And they're going to be publishing, I believe, 4 of these over the next little while, just information questions.
So people can call that toll-free information line
Or they
for
can
more
call
details.
our society as well. We can refer them to people within their own jurisdiction, their own communities that are working on the implementation of the Adoption Act, as well as our own Lean On Me people that are willing to talk to you and help you through your rediscovery, or your journey, as we call it, of rediscovery and reunion as well.
What do you think is the most important thing for somebody to keep in mind, whether that person is an adoptee or a birth parent? Obviously the two parties involved who would be seeking information, who would be using this greater enhanced access to information that will help them discover their birth roots. What do people really need to know or do before they get started in that whole process?
I think they have to be, I think they have to be asking themselves what they're looking for. Right. You know, if they've got issues, whether you're an adoptee maybe who has some issues going on, the reunion is not going to solve all their problems, and it may surface more, and I think some more issues that are going to come up. So I think it's really important to ask yourself why and what do I want out of this, and to try and keep that in perspective as you're going through your journey. And that is what it is. It's a walk that I'll be walking all my life, and through my relationships and building them. And you know, as we grow, and now I have 2 sons, they're learning about my birth parents, and they know their grandparents, my adoptive parents, and you know, they're beginning to understand. And that second generation, I didn't want my children to not have that generation. That's the important thing about the new act, and reuniting. And if that's getting the medical information, I think you need to decide what you want, and what's healthy for you, and not what's healthy for somebody else, because you have to look after yourself. And whether you're the birth parent or the adoptee, you have to really think about, what am I going to get out of this, and what you know, how much can I handle, and be prepared to be able to handle anything. And you know, that's from some really difficult issues that Nancy and I have had to work with, whether it's going back and meeting another culture, which is, you know, I've done it, and it is difficult.
Because you were not raised in the Aboriginal culture,
right,
through your adoptive family.
Right, and to go back and, you know, just be taught everything that children are raised with in that community, and I have to go back at 24 and be taught, you know, and it's a wonderful experience, but I also look at it, and I'm glad I did it, because my children now know, which I think is really valuable. But there are, you know, whether it's going, and we really try and connect people who phone us with somebody who's going through something very similar, and that's whether you're a person going back to another culture or a different religion, which can also be, you know, a big issue if the birth mom was Roman Catholic and the adopted parents are Jewish, and how are we going to make this all work? And I mean, but people don't think about that, and those are things that you have to really think about, or you know,
It's
whether
more
their
than
children
just
were.
finding somebody that you look like.
Yeah.
It's much more than that, and it's also, it's not something I just want to know what they look like and then I'll get on with my life. This is a commitment. This is a lifelong process, and you can't really walk in and just walk away. It's not that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what you're going to find out there, and you need to be prepared. So in addition to thinking about what it is that you think you want out of this, what expectations you might have, we strongly recommend talking to others, getting involved in a support group, doing the reading that's out there, and there's lots of really excellent reading, and making connections with people that have lived and walked in your shoes already. It's very important. You don't know what you're getting into.
Who are the professionals in this field?
Well, Cecelia and I think, have become somewhat professional because we've walked the talk. It is people that are in the adoption circle itself. I think it's difficult for those that have not lived this to be able to provide any type of assistance to someone else if you haven't been there. There are some good people, counselors, but I've gone to one myself, but I found that I spent a lot of my time educating her on what it meant to be a birth parent and what it meant to be adopted, and I think if you're looking to heal, you need that empathy. You need to have that person sitting across from you going, yeah, I know what you mean, or and validating, and you know, without having to go into a lot of detail, that you can say a few words and somebody's going, yes, I've been there, I know what you mean.
I don't think there's enough time spent in the training with social workers or through the counseling, and you know, I think we're getting to a point now where they're willing to listen to what we have to say, and I think they walk away from some of our workshops with a much better understanding of the dynamics. And you know, I too paid 3 counselors a lot of money, and ended up doing the same thing as Nancy, telling them the books to read, telling them, you know, and I wasted so much time in trying to explain who these people were, and then my time would be up and I'd have to pay her X amount of dollars, and you know, those are really difficult, and I think it's just we can gain so much from each other through our experiences, and I have no doubt, you know, I don't doubt that we are the professionals. You know, through 9 years of work for myself, and with Nancy, and being able to work so close with her on a, you know, basically a daily basis, and times in hotels, that we've really learned to understand each other and each other's perspectives, and we can offer that to.
It's not to say
individuals.
we agree all the time
No.
either, and that's really nice too, is that there are different issues for both of us, but we are able to take what we learn from each other and apply it in our own relationships with my child and with her birth mom and father. And it's been really valuable.
Do you feel that there is still an opportunity for the two of you to learn more from each other?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Every time we talk, I learn a little bit more. When we went to Toronto recently to speak at a conference back there, we presented our stories and we tried to talk about issues that had come up for us as a result of reunion, and I kind of looked at her and went, I didn't know that. And it's the same thing back and forth, and we ended up having a dialogue later, and I think at one point we even disagreed quite vocally, but it is constantly learning, and every time I talk, every time I take that extra little step and force myself to talk, it's still sometimes difficult, believe it or not, to talk. I hear myself saying something that I hadn't really clued into before, and I am constantly learning and more, and appreciating more, and understanding more what it is to be involved in this field.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are the challenges that lie ahead as a result of the, I don't know if this is the correct way to say it, but the newer openness in terms of accessibility to personal information by the people involved? What are going to be the challenges either to the system of retrieval or to the people who are trying to retrieve the information?
there's going to be a big waiting list. I think that there'll be a lot of people seeking out a lot of information, and hopefully the ministry has, and they're working on trying to take into account to have the right staff there. But
And this is social services.
so yeah, through vital statistics, and I think they're going to be bombarded with applications for information, and hopefully they'll be processed fairly quickly. And we're going to be having people going into reunions unexpectedly. And so the more people that we can reach now to try and help them prepare, the better off we're going to be, because it's going to be difficult. I have no doubt that for the first few years, as people are getting used to the Act and what this means to them in particular, we're going to have people who aren't ready, and we've got to be there to help them figure out what they need to do next. What's their next step for them that's healthy for them emotionally?
I think part of the challenge they're running into right now is just getting the information out that the Act has changed, and that in fact you could get the phone call or the knock on the door, trying to reach people that we are trans in society, and how do you reach people that have gone across the country to give birth and then gone back across the country and then moved to a different country, but they can be found. I mean, it is a relatively small world, and trying to get that information out and trying to let them know that there are services and support available, so when that knock comes, it doesn't knock you for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that is still a fear for some people.
Absolutely, absolutely. We get phone calls every day from adoptive parents, from adoptees, and from birth parents that are absolutely terrified. They don't know what it means. They have not even thought about it. They thought they were protected. What do they do? Where do they go? Can they stop it? Help.
Well, and I think that, again, it's the fear of not understanding what it means. And, I have people who phone me all the time saying, well, why did we do this? Why were you one of those people who worked for Open Records? And I wanted my privacy, and I was guaranteed my privacy. Especially if it's for a birth mom, she was in most cases a minor, and I really tried to encourage her that now she's the adult, and we are the adult as the infants, the adoptees. We're all now adults. We're entitled to that information, and she is entitled to that information as well, which I don't think she ever felt she was.
So people can call the 1-800 number and get more information on this. Cecelia, Reekie, and Nancy Kato, thank you for joining me on Pressure Point.
Thank you.